Hi, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you to this episode of Mahabharat. This version of Mahabharat is the translated version of the Ved Vyas Mahabharat by Kisari Mohan Ganguli. This is an honest attempt to share the version with the listeners. Adi Parva Continued. Section 30. Swati said, at the very touch by Garuda of the great might with his feet, the branch of the tree broke as it was caught by Garuda. Casting his eyes around in wonder, he saw the Valakhilya rishis hanging therefrom with heads downwards and engaged in ascetic penances, reflecting that if that bow fell down, the rishis would be slain and the mighty one held the elephant and the tortoise still more firmly with his claws. And from the fear of slaying the rishis and the desire of saving them, held that bow in his beaks and rose on his wings. The great rishis were struck with wonder at the sight of that act of his, which was beyond even the power of the gods, and gave that mighty bird a name. And they said, as this ranger of the skies rises on its wings, bearing a heavy burden, let this foremost of the birds, having snakes for his food, be called Garuda, or the bearer of heavy weight. And shaking the mountains by his wings, Garuda leisurely coursed through the skies. And as he soared with the elephant and the tortoise in his claws, he beheld various regions underneath. Desiring, as he did, to save the Valakilyas, he saw not a spot whereon to sit. At last, he went to the foremost of the mountains called Gandhamadana. There he saw his father Kashyap engaged in ascetic devotions. Kashyap also saw his son, that ranger of skies, of divine form, possessed of great splendor and energy and strength, endued with the speed of the wind or the mind, huge as a mountain peak, a ready smitter like the curse of a Brahmin, inconceivable, indescribable, frightful to all creatures, possessed of great prowess, terrible of the splendor of Agni himself, and incapable of being overcome by the deities, Danavas, and the invincible Rakshasas, capable of splitting mountain summits and sucking the ocean itself, and destroying the three worlds, fierce and looking like Yama himself. The illustrious Kashyap, seeing him approach and knowing also his motive, spoke unto him these words. Kashyap said, O child, do not commit a rash act, for then you wouldst have to suffer pain. The Valakhilya, supporting themselves by drinking the rays of the sun, might, if angry, blast thee. Sati continued. Kashyap then propitiated for the sake of his son the Valakilyas of exceedingly good fortune and whose sins had been destroyed by the ascetic penances. And Kashyap said, Yea, whose wealth is asceticism. The essay of Garuda is for the good of all creatures. The task is great that he is striving to accomplish. It behoveth you to accord him your permission. Swati continued, those ascetics thus addressed by the illustrious Kashyap abandoned that bow and went to the sacred mountain of Himavat for purpose of ascetic penance. And after those rishis had gone, son of Vinata, with the voice obstructed by the bow in his beak, asked his father Kashyap, saying, O illustrious one, where shall I throw this arm of the tree? O illustrious one, indicate to me some regions without human beings. Then Kashyap spoke of a mountain without human beings, with caves and dales, always covered with snow and incapable of approach by ordinary creature, even in thought. And the great bird bearing that branch, that elephant, and the tortoise proceeded with great speed towards the mountain. The great arm of the tree, with which the bird of the huge body flew around, could not be girt around with a cord made of 100 cow hides. Garuda, the lord of birds, then flew away for hundreds of thousands of yojans within the shortest time. And going according to the directions of his father to that mountain, almost in a moment, that ranger of the skies let fall the gigantic bow, and it fell with a great noise. And the prince of mountains shook, struck with the storm raised by Garuda's wind, and the trees thereon dropped showers of flowers, and the peaks decked with gems and gold adorning that great mountain itself were loosened and fell down on all sides. And the falling brow struck down numerous trees, which, with golden flowers amid dark foliage, shone like clouds charged with lightning. And those trees, bright as gold, falling down upon the ground and dyed with mountain metals, shone as if they were bathed in the rays of the sun. Then the best of the birds, Garuda, perching on the summit of that mountain, ate both the elephant and the tortoise, rose on his wings with great speed from the top of the mountain. And various omens began to appear among the gods, foreboding fear. Indra's favorite thunderbolt blazed up in a fright. Meteors with flames and smokes loosened from the Vulcan shot down during the day. And the weapons of the Vasus, the Rudras, the Adityas, the Sabhyas, the Maruts, and other gods began to spend their force against one another. Such a thing had never happened even during the war between the gods and the Asuras. And the winds blew accompanied with thunder, and meteors fell by thousands, and the sky, though cloudless, roared tremendously. And even he who was the god of gods shed showers of blood, and the flowery garlands on the necks of the gods faded, and the province suffered diminution. The terrible masses of clouds dropped thick showers of blood, and the dust raised by the winds darkened the splendor of the very coronets of the gods. And he of 1,000 sacrifices, Indra, with the only gods perplexed with fear at the sight of those dark forebodings, spoke unto Brihaspati thus. Why, O worshipful one, have these natural disturbances suddenly arisen? No foe do I behold who would oppress us in war. Brihaspati answered, O chief of the gods, O thou of 1,000 sacrifices, it is from thy fault and carelessness, and owing also to the ascetic penances of the high souled great rishis, the Valakilyas, the son of Kashyap and Vinata, a ranger of the skies, endued with great strength and possessing the capacity of assuming at will any form, is approaching to take away the Soma. And the bird foremost among all, endued with great strength, is able to rob you of the Soma. Everything is possible with him. The unachievable he can achieve. Sati continued. Indra, having heard these words, then spoke unto those that guarded the Amrita, saying, a bird endued with great strength and energy has set his heart on taking away the Amrita. I warn you beforehand so that he may not succeed in taking it away by force. Brihaspati has told me that his strength is immeasurable, and the gods, hearing of it, were amazed and took precautions. And they stood surrounding the Amrita. And Indra, also of great prowess, and the wielder of the thunder, stood with them. And the gods wore curious breastplates of gold of great value, and set with gems, and bright leather armors of great toughness. And the mighty deities wielded various sharp edged weapons of terrible shapes, countless in number, emitting, even all of them, sparks of fire with smoke. And they were all armed with many a discus and iron base, furnished with spikes and trident, battle axe, and various kinds of sharp pointed missiles, and polished swords and maces of terrible form, all befitting their respective bodies. And decked with celestial ornaments and resplendent with those bright arms, the gods waited there, their fear allayed. And the gods of incomparable strength, energy, and splendor resolved to protect the Amrita. Capable of splitting the towns of Asuras, all displayed themselves in form resplendent as the fire. And in consequence of the gods standing there, that would be battlefield owing to hundreds of thousands of maces furnished with iron spikes, shone like another firmament illuminated by the rays of the sun. So ends the 30th section of the Astic Parv of the Adi Parv. Section 31st. Astic Parv continued. Sonak said, O son of Sutta, what was Indra's fault? And what his act of carelessness? How was Garuda born in consequence of the ascetic penances of the Valakilyas? Why also Kashyap, a Brahmin, had the king of birds for a son? Why too was he invincible of all creatures and unslayable of all? Why also was the ranger of the skies capable of going into every place at will and of mustering at will any measure of energy? If these are described in the Puranas, I should like to hear them. Sati said, what thou asked me, indeed, the subject of Puranas. O twice born one, listen as I briefly recite it all. Once upon a time, when the Lord of creation, Kashyap, was engaged in a sacrifice from desire of offspring, the rishis, the gods, and the Gandharvas all gave him help. And Indra was appointed by Kashyap to bring the sacrificial fuel. And with him, those ascetics, the Valakhilyas, and all the other deities. And the Lord Indra, taking up according to his own strength a weight that was mountain like, brought it without any fatigue. And he saw on the way from the rishis of bodies of the measure of the thumb, all together carrying one single stalk of a palasha leaf. And those rishis were, from want of food, very lean and almost merged in their own bodies. And they were so weak that they much afflicted when sunk in the water that collected in an indentation on the road produced by the hoof of a cow. And Purandara, proud of his strength, beheld them with surprise, and laughed at them in derision, soon left them behind, insulting them, besides, by passing over their heads. And those rishis, being thus insulted, were filled with rage and sorrow. And they made preparations for a great sacrifice at which Indra was terrified. Hear, O Sonaka, of the wish of accomplishment of which those vow observing wise and excellent ascetics poured clarified butter of the sacrificial fire with loudly uttered mantras. There shall be another Indra of all gods, capable of going everywhere at will, and of muttering at will any measure of energy, and striking tear into the present king of gods. By the fruit of our ascetic penance, let one rise, fleet as the mind, and fierce withal. And the Lord of the Celestials, of 100 sacrifice, having come to know of this, became very much alarmed and sought the protection of the vow observing Kashyap. And the Prajapati Kashyap, hearing everything from Indra, went to Velakhilyas and asked them if their sacrifice had been successful. And those truth speaking rishis replied to him, saying, let it be as thou sayest. And the Prajapati Kashyap, pacifying them, spake unto them as follows. By the word of Brahma, this one, Indra, had been made the lord of the three worlds. Ye ascetics, ye also are striving to create another Indra. Ye excellent ones, it behoveth you not to falsify the word of Brahma. Let not also this purpose of accomplishing which ye are striving be rendered futile. Let there spring an Indra, a lord of winged creatures, endued with excess of strength. Be gracious unto Indra, who is suppliant before you. And the Valakhilyas, thus addressed by Kashyap, after offering reverence to that first of the Munis, that is the Prajapati Kashyap, spake into him. The Valakhilyas said, O Prajapati, this sacrifice of us all is for an Indra. Indeed, this had also meant for a son being born unto thee. Let this task be now left to thee, and in this matter do whatever thou seest to be good and proper. Swati continued. Meanwhile, moved by the desire of offspring, the good daughter of Daksha, the vow observing, amiable, and fortunate Vinata, her ascetic penance is over, having purified herself with the bath in that season where connubial companionship might prove fruitful, approached her lord, and Kashyap spake into her. Respected one, the sacrifice commenced by me had borne forth. What hath been desired by thee shall come to pass. Two heroic sons shall be born unto thee, who shall be the lord of the three worlds. By the penances of the Vilakhalyas and by virtue of the desire with which I commence my sacrifice, those sons shall be exceedingly good fortune and worshipped by the three worlds. And the illustrious Kashyap spake into her again. Bear thou these auspicious seeds with great care. These two will be the lords of all winged creatures. These heroic rangers of the sky will be respected in all the worlds and capable of assuming any form at will. And the Prajapati, gratified with all that took place, then addressed Indra of 100 sacrifices, saying, Thou shalt have two brothers of great energy and prowess, who shall be to thee even as the helpmates. For them no injury shall result unto thee. Let thy sorrow cease. Thou shalt continue as the Lord of all. Let not, however, the utterances of the name Brahma be ever again slighted by thee, nor let the very wrathful ones whose words are even the thunderbolt be ever again insulted by thee. Indra, thus addressed, went to heaven, his fears dispelled, and Vinata also, her purpose fulfilled, was exceedingly glad, and she gave birth to two sons, Aruna and Garuda. And Aruna, of underdeveloped body, became the forerunner of the sun, and Garuda was vested with the lordship over the birds. O thou of Bhrigu's race, hearken now to the mighty achievement of Garuda. So ends the 31st section of the Adi Parv of the Astik Parv. With this, we come to an end to this episode of Mahabharat and its heroes. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, this is your host, Madhulika Rajahan, signing off. Stay healthy always. Narayan Narayan.